see. Can I record? Yes. Okay. So it is recording, and I'm crossing my fingers that that it works. So for anybody that comes in late, if you see them asking questions in the chat box, help those writers out. Tell them to plug it into Q&A. I'm going to turn it over to Holly, and she's going to introduce herself and then get right into it. Holly, I think if you have share screen, it functions the same way because I see the button at the bottom. So it's just like a different structure.
Yeah, I see it. I think it should be okay. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. So we'll we're the guinea pigs for the first one. So okay, Holly, take it away. And I'm right here behind the scenes. My camera and my mic are off, but if you need me, just say my name and I'll pop up.
Okay, no problem. Hi guys, thanks for joining me on your Saturday. I am Holly Brown. I am an independent producer, but I've also worked extensively as a development executive. So I'm going to first give you a little bit of background on myself because I think it's helpful to know where I'm coming from when I am here lecturing to you guys. At least you'll have some of my background and kind of an understanding of my path and the experience from which I'm speaking. I'm not the typical kid who grew up with the video camera and loved film and parents were cinephiles, not at all. I actually, my parents only let me watch Disney cartoons, interestingly enough. So if you want to know anything about any Disney cartoon, I've got it under wrap. But I was very much an avid reader, and I already had a love of storytelling. I read voraciously, and then as soon as I got into junior high and high school, I became obsessed with theater, and I absolutely loved the medium of theater and wanted to be a theater actress. Film still wasn't even remotely on my radar. So I decided to go to college to be a theater actress, which my father was horrified, but very supportive, despite his horror, and told me that if I wanted to do that, that's fine, but I also had to back. So I picked English literature, thinking that I was fooling him because I could take all Shakespeare classes and pretend that I was actually working on my English major. The truth of the matter is that's probably the degree that I use the most right now. While I was at Colby in Maine, I then went and studied theater in London for 6 months under a bunch of London theater professionals, which was an amazing experience to see these plays. I mean, I saw Ian McKellen, I saw performances in the Royal Shakespeare Academy, I saw bar theater. It was amazing. It was really a great experience, and I came back to my college and was very offended that college students weren't going to the theater. And so I decided to start my own dinner theater company because I figured if you feed people, they will come. So I discovered that a student meal credit was $2.10, and that if I wanted to hire the catering department, it was $8. So I need to find a way to get from $2.10 to $8. So I started raising the money, which is what a producer does, and eventually made enough so that I could I could afford to throw 4 shows. I sold them out immediately because my big sales pitch was, come watch a comedy show. You'll get a 5-course meal served to you. And all you have to do is give me your meal credit and just don't go to the dining hall. So obviously it worked. It was a smashing success. I did Neil Simon's Fools. I directed, produced, and managed it. And that was the moment that I realized that my strength was actually producing, not acting. And I really wanted to pursue a career as a producer, but still didn't quite know what that meant on a larger scale. So I went to grad school at Syracuse. I got my master's in television, radio, and film. It is the wrong reason to go to grad school. You don't go to find out if you like something, but it worked for me. And then I packed up the car and drove out to LA with no job, no place to live. And it was terrifying. I got an internship that turned into a job at the Kohner Agency in Beverly Hills. Great boutique talent agency with some really awesome women. And then I went and worked as Todd Lieberman's assistant at Mandeville on the Disney lot during 8 Below and Shaggy Dog. And then got a job at Overbrook Entertainment, which is Will Smith's company, I was there for 6 years, all the way from Pursuit of Happiness and Lakeview Terrace and I'm Legend and Hancock, all the way through This Means War. And then went over to Jeremy Renner's company. He had just started a new company with his partner, Don Hanfield, at Indian Paintbrush, which is an independent financier. And then I was with them for 3.5 years. We did Kill the Messenger while I was there, a TV movie with Crackle, and then most recently The Founder, which is currently in theaters now. I did leave the Combine to go produce my first film in New York, which is called Cruise, with Rob Siegel, who's the writer of The Founder, and who also wrote and directed a movie called Big Fan with Patton Oswalt, which is excellent. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. So that's what got me here. So I produced my first feature with him, and then since then I've been setting up my own projects and producing on my own. So the purpose of this particular webinar is to kind of talk about how to get your foot in the door. And we've titled it How to Impress a Development Executive in the Current Marketplace. And so this will be from researching the right company for your particular material to the general meeting, and then to delivering a screenplay that sells. I'm not going to dig as far and deep into the screenplay, because I know a lot of you are taking classes and doing studies for the screenplay. So I just want to cover kind of the more businessy aspects of getting yourself in the door. So I think the most important thing is first to kind of explain what a development executive does. When I came to LA, I had no idea what a development executive was at all. I didn't even know it was a job or a potential career. A development executive is the very crucial executive at every company who is responsible for bringing in material, attaching writers, and developing the screenplay all the way to the point where it's going to go into production. So they usually hand it off once the screenplay is ready to attach cast. Some development executives do attach cast, and obviously they attach the filmmaker as well. But for the most part, once it's ready to go into pre-production, they go on to the other projects which they have in development. And usually development executives have a multitude of projects in development. They are getting hit with many screenplays at one time. They're having to vet through piles of material that's coming from agents and managers and lawyers. So I also didn't at the time realize the volume that a development executive has to push through. Within the production company structure, just to kind of give you a layout, entry-level position is the assistant to a junior executive, and you kind of move your way through the assistant structure. So you might assist a junior executive, so you kind of are learning what they do, and you're helping out and supporting them. It's like an apprenticeship. And then you'll move up, and then hopefully assist a senior executive, president of the company, et cetera. And then ideally you'll either be promoted to either a coordinator, or some are promoted to CE, creative executive, which is the junior executive position. And then the next one after that is DOD, or Director of Development. And then some companies will have a VP, Vice President. And then sometimes, depending on the size of the company, they'll have a Senior Vice President, Executive President, and the head of the company. But I want to make sure everybody knows what a CE and a DOD are. And even the assistants are very valuable and can potentially be a way into the company. It's these mid-level executives, lower-level executives, all the way through VP, that are doing the heavy lifting in terms of finding new material and finding writers. So I say that because I don't think you should discount the value of a younger, lower-level executive. I think, a lot of people believe that you have to go straight to the top because those are the decision makers. And while in some cases that is true, I have been a young and hungry executive who is dying to make her mark, and I know there are a lot out there. So even I make sure that I target a lot of the younger executives, because I know that they'll really hustle and they'll push when a higher level executive might not necessarily be paying attention, because they're spread so thin in a million different directions. So now that you know the layout of the production company, when you're bringing your screenplay in, you want to figure out what companies are appropriate for your project. For example, you're not going to want to bring a heavy drama to a production company that's known for just doing comedy, and vice versa. And I know that's a very obvious thing, but you should really examine the slate of the company that you're trying to target and what movies are similar to the one that you're bringing in. You want to look for commonalities. So, you know, all of the stuff you can find online, IMDb, just Googling on the internet, you can figure out what movies a particular company has released and whether or not you would be a good fit. For example, Todd Phillips' company is mostly known for comedy. So they do The Hangover, and they did Starsky and Hutch, and they did War Dogs. So everything that they do has this energy and comedy to it. So, for example, if you have the next, I'm going to use Kill the Messenger, but if you have the next Kill the Messenger without any sense of humor to it, it's probably not right for Todd Phillips' company. But if you have a more broad comedy that has like a great hook to it, then Todd Phillips would be the place to go. Similarly, at Jeremy Renner's company, we did everything kind of had that masculine, edgy, character-driven feel to it, director-driven fare, because if you look at Jeremy's body of work, everything from Dahmer to Hurt Locker to Hawkeye to Kill the Messenger, there's a brand there, and he is very much the character actor who tackles tough issues. I think he's a very brave actor. So you probably wouldn't bring him a rom-com. He's probably not going to be interested in it. So just make sure you're targeting where you're bringing your material. And then also looking at the size of the company. You want to be able to tell if the company is worth even trying to get in. The larger and more high profile a company is, the harder it's going to be to send in a unsolicited or unrepped piece of material. A lot of the bigger companies have unsolicited submission policies. For example, both when I was at Overbrook and at the Combine, we did not accept unsolicited material. It's for legal reasons that across the board blanket policy. If it didn't come from an agent or manager or lawyer, we couldn't accept it. So it's important to respect those policies and find another way. Find another way through an agent or a manager or another producer or point of contact. I'm not saying give up, but know that those unsolicited submission policies are there for the company's legal protection. And I know a lot of you are like, well, it's impossible to get an agent or manager without a piece of material that's it's hard to get in the door to get an agent or manager, and you can't get material to producers without an agent or manager, so what do I do? There are ways to get into a room with an agent or manager. A lot of the agents and managers I know look at the competitions, the bigger high profile competitions such as the Nichols Fellowship, even now the Blacklist. These type of competitions, Tracking Bees has a competition every year. These programs are looked at by agents and managers to find material. They're constantly looking. The juniors, junior agents, junior managers, they will also go to festivals and try and find someone. People are looking for talented people to rep. You just have to be in the right place. And so position yourself in that way. Apply to these competitions, send your script in, get in the room with people, and then and go to these different kind of festivals, even the smaller ones. Like if you can get into Sundance Writers Lab, if you can, there's great programs in Seattle, in Texas, Austin. These are all worth your time, and are places where reps go to try and find new clients. There's also the query letter. And I know you guys have heard a lot about the query letter. And again, make sure the company doesn't have an unsolicited submission policy, but Query letters do work, particularly with agents and managers. They're less likely to work with a production company, but with agents and managers, they do read query letters. So I am going to try and share my screen with you guys right now to give you a sense of what works and doesn't work for a query letter. Okay, hang on 2 seconds, guys. Query letter, got it. All right, hopefully you guys can see this. I'm just trying to make it big. And now it's sideways. Better, okay. So here is a sample query letter. This is what not to do. This one was sent to me in 2009. An old school Republican finds himself in the middle of the hood, having to make his living off the very people he's despised his whole life. Genre, sitcom. Okay, it's not addressed. It has typos all over it, severe typos. It said that comedy relies on conflict, and there's nothing more conflictual than watching our anti-hero Bill, a combination of Al Bundy, Archie Bunker, and a large dose of Rush Limbaugh thrown in, enter the deepest part of the hood and match wits with crimies, gangbangers, corrupt judges, and police. And it goes on to describe Bill with a bunch of serious typos and spacing issues. And then says, I have a pilot already shot on the cheap that's been seen by Dick Clark and a couple other notables and pronounced funny, but due to the death of my liaison to them, I basically shelved it, and much better material than this is possibly. We have more problems. Do not ever talk about the people who have seen your project. And a couple other notables also is problematic. And then also saying that you shelved it means that this piece of material is older and that you haven't had much luck with it. So, and by the way, that's not saying that you shouldn't sometimes put material aside, but you don't need to put that in your query letter. Ooh, sorry guys, I just screwed that up again. Okay, next one. There we go. Sorry guys, I don't know why it's doing this. But I think you can see this. So the next one that came in August 12th, 2015. Thank you in advance for taking time out of your busy schedule to read this email. Okay, that's fine. I'm an alumni of USC, and the script is a reimagining of my thesis project, which was 6 years in the making. Needless to say, this project has followed me around for some time. Okay, as I said before, you don't need to say that up front. Horror thriller, girl dragon tattoo meets Let the Right One In. Great, comp's great. But the way this is structured is, the way that this one's structured is problematic. It's not giving me much to work off of. And then also it says most companies have strict policies and won't even give it a thought. That's why I'm seeking representation. I have no doubt this film will find a home with the proper team surrounding it. Also, I think it's much better if you acknowledge who you are, dive into a little bit of the screenplay, and thank them for their time. This next one, Dear James, this one came in 2010. I know you're extremely busy, especially starting production today, therefore I thought it might be better if I send you an email with the details. All right, fine. We wrote a very funny Christmas comedy that has received strong consideration coverage from everyone that has seen it, including William Morris. Don't say where the coverage has come in from. You don't want to say that it's been covered. The play is very close to shooting script, and with the right comedic actor, Will Smith is the family man and Kevin James for the role of Santa, there's no doubt this would be a box office hit. We're also thinking Willow Smith would be perfect for Will's daughter. You don't want to precast it for the people that you're presenting this to. You want to be very, very straightforward. Also, Danny Dimbort, the CEO and partner of New Millennium Film, is willing to make a firm offer of $7 million, see below. If you don't have a in writing confirmation of the amount of money, do not put that in. We have had people do things like that, and we've put in phone calls and then found out that wasn't true at all. You do not want to lie in your cover letter. The industry is actually very small and everybody talks, so just be aware of that. If you put things that are untruths in your query letters, there's a good chance you will be found out. Now, there are some good query letters, and so I include these as what to do. These are two that I received while I was at the Combine. The first one's very, very basic, but I think is a great way to dive in. It tells me very quickly what the story is. It's a gritty, true story of friendship, forgiveness, and redemption that takes place in the volatile world of professional heavyweight boxing. Then dive straight into the story, tells me what it is. This is a very well-written statement, and then says, I've spent many years in New York and LA producing documentary reality television, so it gives me some background. I optioned the rights to this particular project and was a finalist in the screenplay competition. Great, that's all great. And then just simply says, if the story interests you, I'd like to send you the screenplay or a short synopsis. It's best, and lets it go. Letters like this, the very concise description of what it is with enough detail so that I know what sets it apart is very appealing to agents and managers in particular, because they will see that you can already boil down your project in a way that both describes it very succinctly, but also catches the interest of the reader. And then this next one, it's a little bit more creative. Would you enter the mind of a killer to save someone you love? If so, I humbly submit my neo-noir feature X for your consideration. Then dives into the story, and again says, as an undergraduate, I received writing awards for my sci-fi prose, discovered a love of screenwriting, okay. And also says, you know, a personal connection to the story. Thank you for your time and consideration. If you'd like to read the screenplay in more detail, I'll get it to you immediately. Again, not putting a lot of information in, making it so that it's quick and easy to read, because again, they're going through so many of these letters, but it's polite and well written. Because if you think about it, sorry guys, you are a writer, so you want to make sure that we know you can write in your screenplay. These are samples, and then, okay, I'm back. All right, that worked. Okay, the other way that you can get into the room with an agent or manager is personal contacts. So if you have an alumni connection or personal connection of some sort, don't underestimate the value of a general coffee, you know, sending and having somebody introduce you and provide an opportunity for that link, or just sending somebody an email and saying, hi, I'm a screenwriter. I'd love to take 15 minutes of your time through a personal connection. I'd love to take 15 minutes of your time just to chat, and then go from there. You'll always hear that networking is really important, and that does exist for writers as well as anyone in this facet of the business. In terms of cold calls, you can cold call, but if you're going to do that, I just want to go over a couple of quick points on that. You want to be very chipper, and you want to be pleasant, and you don't want to push your luck. So don't try and keep the person on the phone. Don't try and force them to accept your script by, like pushing through. You want to just be very pleasant, ask what the submission policy is, and then respect it. Or, you can always ask them if there's another way by which you can get your screenplay looked at. But again, you want to keep it short and succinct. Remember, if you're talking to an assistant, that poor assistant has got a million phone calls coming in. So their phone is ringing off the hook and they're seeing it light up and blink. So you want to just keep it very quick because they need to move on. But, sometimes the assistants will say, I'll take a look, or they'll send you to their junior executive or junior manager. So, cold calls can work. It's really up to your personal preference. Again, the first ones that I mentioned are usually the most effective. The screenplay competitions, Blacklist has been a great conduit for a lot of people, and same with Tracking B and those type of groups in LA as well. And Roadmap writers, actually, you guys are very smart to go through Roadmap. Joey and his team have a great track record for setting people up. So you guys are in good hands, but these are other methods if you want to double down. All right, so now you have your meeting. And now what do? So you've gotten in the room and you don't have a clue what's next. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what turns a development executive on or off in a pitch. The number one thing is time. You do not want to go too long. You want to grab the attention of the person you're talking to, and you want to get to the point. So you want to be succinct. Even in pitches, I advise writers who are coming in to pitch a full movie not to pitch for more than, say, 20 minutes. I try and keep it very, very short whenever possible. And then you always want to follow up on your meeting because you want to establish a relationship with the people that you're working with. So I always recommend a handwritten note. Handwritten notes were always lovely. I always really liked getting a handwritten note. But you can also just do an email response. If you have discussed sending something, make sure you send what you were discussed and what you were going to get over to them. You want to reference something from the meeting, something personal. But again, keep it short and concise, but you want to keep that relationship going. In terms of getting writing assignments, sometimes if you're in a general meeting, a project might come up and they'll see if you want to pitch on a writing assignment. You want to do the work, especially when you are a newer writer or a younger writer in the business. You want to go the extra mile. It's hard and it's a lot of work, but it can be good practice, and people do pay attention if you are going that extra mile. Listen to what they're looking for specifically, and ask a lot of questions. You also want to take you should definitely ask a lot of questions and just make sure you're meeting what they're looking for. When you are working with a development executive, either on a screenplay or if you are working on a pitch, you want to take notes. And when you're getting notes from somebody, they're not all going to be great. Not all development executives are going to give good notes. And not all the notes are going to work. But you do need to try and take them. I always say, not all notes are good notes, but they do often point to or highlight an issue in the script. So even though they might not have the fix for you, it's always a good idea to get to the heart of the note and figure out, why they're bringing this up. So I always recommend just rechecking that area of the script or that particular issue if they're bringing up, for example, a scene is bothering them and it's not working and they're not sure why. You want to go back to that scene and see if there's a way to correct it, even if you disagree with the point that they are making. You want to find a way to push back without being considered stubborn. So you always take the note into account, but then if you are going to push back and make your point, make sure you have a strong argument for why this doesn't work. But I've worked with many a writer who, if a note didn't work, they said, it doesn't work for these reasons, and it's been great because it is supposed to be a dialogue. It is supposed to be a collaboration. So just take notes in stride, but definitely make sure you're taking the notes. In terms of what's out there right now, there are some things that are flooding the market. So when you have a screenplay and you want to sell it, just be aware that the current marketplace. You want to examine the current marketplace and see what's there right now and what is perhaps an oversaturation. The most obvious example right now is zombies. We're just oversaturated with zombie movies, zombie projects, and a lot of them aren't doing very well right now. So if you bring up zombies at the current stage, most people are going to groan. And even though I just saw that Netflix released a series with another permutation it's called Santa Clarita Diet, with another permutation of the zombie genre. I think people are still kind of resisting it. I think we're also moving past YA material and superhero movies. While they still are pretty prevalent, they're all based on a very well-known piece of IP or a continuation of something we've already seen. And you know, we'll just wait for the next wave of what's popular. But I always recommend, like, you start the next wave. If you have a genre that is oversaturated and you still want to position your material to get in, you want to find a unique way into the material that we haven't seen before, a groundbreaking way in. I mean, for example, we've seen a million different spy shows, but then The Americans came out, which kind of flipped the genre on its head. You want to find a way to make a unique or different take on the particular material. I also really look for material that has a very simple but relatable idea at its core. I always like to use the example of The Sopranos, because the story behind The Sopranos is they went into the room to give the pitch, and basically pitched a man who is going to therapy because he's having all these troubles with his family that are completely out of control, and he has all this stuff going on, and he's super frustrated with his marriage and all of these other things, and so he's completely relatable. And so you think that the pitch is like, all right, I've seen this a million times, all right, I got it. And then he said, oh yeah, and he runs the mob. And that was kind of the mic drop moment. But I point at it because he first got into the core of the character and what that means before diving into kind of the background. All right. I also, you'll hear often that development executives only read 30 pages and then put it down, unless they love it. So something to think about. First 15 to 30 pages are the most important because that's what's grabbing your audience. And so I want to show you one of my favorite scripts or favorite movies. You want to make the person who's reading your script forget that they're on page 15. They shouldn't be looking at the page numbers. And that's usually rooted in both a unique idea and your characters. I am huge on character. Here we go. Okay. Where in the world did it go? Sorry, guys. I'm a very big fan of, I talk a lot about character because I think all great movies and all great TV shows are rooted in really great, amazing characters. If you look at This Is Us right now, it's doing so well. And it's essentially a family drama. But people really love those characters and want to spend time with those characters, and are seeing a very kind of universal, relatable idea behind family. And so that is what has everybody drawn in. And I also often will cite Crazy Stupid Love as a great piece of material because it has such an amazing way into the story. So I always talk about, if you haven't seen the movie, I highly recommend even if you just look at the first 10 minutes. But I bring this up because this is one that drew me in right away and told me so much about the characters without saying a single word. So on the very beginning, we fade in. It's a French restaurant. There's soft music, a classy joint, so we've set the stage. And the camera just pans across feet. And you see all of these very well-dressed people, but you're only seeing like their legs and feet under the table. And they're nuzzling each other. You know, there's a high-heeled shoe running up a man's leg. They're you know, close together. And then finally we land on a pair of feet, white sneakers next to fancy high heels, and they're not nuzzling. There's distance here. And with that one single pan, you realize that we're in a romantic restaurant and these two people couldn't be further apart, both in terms of what they're wearing and they're not touching. And then we pan up and we see our lead characters. We see Cal Weaver and his wife, Tracy, and they're a very handsome couple, but they couldn't be further apart, and they're not talking. Cal pulls out his reading glasses. Well, I'm full. You shouldn't have eaten all that bread. Want to just share dessert. They're not on the same page. A little bit of dialogue here, and then she says, I want a divorce. He says creme brulee. And in that moment, we know exactly what we're going to see. We're going to see a movie about this very distant couple. We then cut immediately to a little girl being chased by her babysitter. And we don't know why we're seeing that scene. But as you can see on page 2, the minute that the smashed photograph hits the ground, you see that it's Cal and Tracy, and that this is their home, so they have a child. So this divorce is going to affect the child. And all of these things are told to you mostly through action as opposed to dialogue. And I think that makes the best, most interesting type of screenplays. You'll often hear me say, show, don't tell. Okay. All right. So again, just to recap, we're looking for a unique idea, characters. We want to make the person forget they're at page 15 or 30, that they can't stop reading because they want to find out what's going to happen. And just focus on those first 15 to 30 pages. And also establishing a really great character, because development executives are also looking whether or not they can cast it. So if you have a great character and that they can draw a really great cast, that just makes it more marketable and more appealing for when they are pitching your project to their bosses. All right. The general meeting, I'm going to talk about that really briefly. If you go into a general meeting, again, you want to be chipper and pleasant. Personality is crucial. You want to try and make a shared connection. This is a very social business, and I would like to say it's just what's on the page, but you're also going to need to be able to pitch. You're going to want to form a connection with the executive. So, ask questions. They are supposed to engage you, but all of them don't necessarily do that. So you just want to be armed and prepared to keep the conversation going. It is often, if you write a really great screenplay and you get an agent or manager and they send you out here and you do the water bottle tour. We all call it the water bottle tour because you're going from couch to couch to couch and everybody's giving you a water bottle. And these can be great, but you just want to make sure you're forming a connection with each person, and be prepared with ideas. You might be going in for one thing, but make sure you have a couple ideas on hand, maybe an extra screenplay or 2 on hand, because they're going to ask you the same question in every meeting. What are you doing next? What are you working on right now? So you just want to be prepared for that. But these, and all of these are not necessarily, these are just kind of generalities, but I just want to make sure I cover everything so that you guys feel prepared going into these meetings. So yeah, so that's the recap and kind of the overview of how to get into the room and what people are looking for, and the basics, the more businessy side of things that I think isn't necessarily covered in normal classes, because there's a lot more to it than just, unfortunately, than just great writing. So I can now open it up to questions, guys.
There's no camera apparently from my end, but that's okay. You guys can hear me, right? If Holly, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Then that's fine. I'm sure everyone else can as well. Yes?
Okay.
Yes, okay, I see a bunch of yeses. All right, guys, if you have questions for Holly, drop them in the Q&A. I'm gonna go through the ones that have already been asked. This one you've kind of touched on, Holly, but how do you personally pick writers to work with?
That's a great question. I am looking, one of the things that I pride myself on is that I really try and make sure that I'm matching the right writer to the right piece of material. So with regards to hiring writers for a project that I have, or that a project that I'm working for a company, I don't like to go out to 50 writers and have them all come up with takes, and it's a waste of the writer's time. And I think a lot of writers end up feeling I don't want to say taken advantage of, but I think a lot of writers, it puts, kind of a sore taste in their mouth. And so for me, I always try and make sure I go out to a very small, succinct group of writers that are a perfect fit for what I'm looking for, both in terms of their taste, their type of writing style, and whatever the project needs. And so I'll keep it very small. And that way, that way the pairing usually results in a really great screenplay. For example, The Founder would not have turned out the way it did if it wasn't for the fact that Rob Siegel was such a perfect fit for that piece of material based on the body of work that he had already done.
I actually read that script. It was fantastic. I had to read it for market, and it's like one of the few that I actually suggested our buyers to go after.
Thank you. Rob did an amazing job. He was the only person who came in with the idea of telling it through Ray Kroc's eyes. But if you look at Rob's body of work, that's what he does so well. He writes inherently unlikable characters in a way where you're like, I'm rooting for this guy, but I don't know why. So it's a talent that he has. And so seeing that, I thought, and he also loves Americana. So it was a good fit. In terms of the type of material I'm looking for, as I touched on before, I'm looking for a unique idea that I can sell and that I can put great cast on, that I think also has a really great character or some sort of big central idea that everyone can connect to. So in many ways, those are the things that I'm looking for. Other places might be looking for something more commercial. I tend to stay in the 15 to 40 realm right now, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't be interested in a really great studio movie with an amazing character or world at its core.
Okay, next question is it better to do general meetings in person if that's possible? I'm planning a trip to LA and was wondering if I should try to set them up that way.
Yes. It's always, a personal connection is always better than doing phone calls. Even if you can do a Skypes are great as well, because then you're face to face and you can see how somebody's reacting and you can form more of a personal connection. But if you can come out to LA, I definitely recommend it.
In the query letter, is it appropriate to inform the company if particular companies are currently looking at the project?
Not necessary in a query letter. The only time other companies really need to know is if you are sending out a project for financing consideration. But I think in query letters, that's definitely not necessary. And with your query letter, I mean, depending on what you're looking for, an agent or a manager, if you send out a bunch of query letters and you have a bunch of agents and managers coming after you, then, you get to play the field a little bit. So I don't think it's necessary for the query letter.
And on that note, guys, do not lie and say certain agents are after you. Like Holly said, it's a very small business. And if they find out that you're lying, that's just going to blacklist you, basically. Because we've had that.
They'll call each other.
Yeah, they will, because they'll call them up and be like, hey, so you're going after so-and-so, and if they've never even heard of you, then it's not going to look well. So we've seen all the tricks before.
And if you say, them. Yeah, I remember there was one incident where somebody had been sending things around saying that one of the people I was working for was attached, and that became litigious. So just be careful. Yeah. I recommend just being honest and straightforward.
Let's see. Should you use the first 10 pages from your period drama if you feel they're your strongest as a sample to get management? I've heard new writers should not pitch period drama because of expense, but is it okay for courting management? Would management disregard you because of that?
No. Great writing translates. If you look that, there's a bunch of great television period drama right now. In terms of buying material, yes, people do tend to hesitate with period because it's so expensive. But I think, I don't necessarily feel that's a taboo anymore. And if you are a great period writer then, and that's your best work, then yes, get that out there. Now, bear in mind that an agent or a manager does need to be able to sell you. So when they're looking at material, they are looking for stuff that they can sell as well as great writing. So if you're going to send out a period drama and you're concerned that they might say, okay, do they just have period drama? If they're interested in your writing, they'll come back to you and say, what else have you got? And that's when you should have something on the back burner that is more commercial.
A development exec said he'd share my work, which he said he loved, if I sent a revised script acting on his notes, which I did. But since then, he has not responded. How long should I leave it before assuming he's not interested or following up with another email or phone call?
Okay, that's a tough one. Also, because I don't know necessarily where the person is or what company they're working with. I would say follow up after a month, and then maybe follow up a month or two later. A lot of, again, as I had said at the beginning, a lot of these development executives are drowning. But if he did say that, very kindly check in probably every month or two. Or, you can put in a phone call, but you want to be very judicious about it. If he doesn't respond to like 3 or 4, it's probably unfortunate that they're not necessarily behaving the best. But I would say, check in a couple times. These people are so busy. They're getting hundreds of emails every day. You should, take into account it may have gotten lost in their email account. I have done that before. I lose emails a lot. So just because, the volume that's coming in and everybody that you need to respond to. So I would check in a couple more times, putting about a month between each one.
Do you have any advice for researching, getting generals, etc., with smaller indie production companies? If you aren't writing large tentpole, high concept action, what's a good way to sell a smaller character-driven drama portfolio?
Well, agents and managers are still picking up those type of clients because the indie market has shifted so much. The definition of an independent movie is so different now. So those kinds of projects are appealing. In terms of targeting agents or managers, look for the people who rep the types of writers and filmmakers that do the type of movie that you make. If you tend to write things like Little Miss Sunshine, find out who represents Michael Arndt and other people who are kind of in that vein, and then target those people for agent or manager meetings. In terms of getting your material into independent companies, if you're sending the letters and making calls and submissions, just target the financiers who are, again, making the movies that you tend to make. And there are so many financiers and buyers out there, from Black Bear Pictures to Film Nation to Sierra Affinity. These are all places that look for more independent material. So just target the people who are making what you want to make.
And guys, EFM is starting European film market. Like nearly all the companies Holly just mentioned, they attend those markets. Not saying fly to Berlin, but check out the Berlin, the schedule and what companies are attending. Those are the ones that Holly is talking about. They produce a huge volume of material. I know this because I'm going through it right now, but yeah, that's another place where you guys can check out companies like that. Do you do pitch sessions with us, Holly?
I do.
Okay, so guys, if you want to pitch to Holly, because I see a few questions about that, you can definitely sign up for a pitch session with her whenever she next has one. Do you think major studio, outer space, sci-fi franchise market is oversaturated?
You have to do it in a different way. I mean, Arrival's not a studio movie, but it's doing so well, and it's such a great, interesting, creative way in. I do think that there's always going to be a market for sci-fi. It's just, which way are you doing it? The unfortunate reality is a lot of the studios right now they're still in the risk-adverse business, so they're mostly looking at IP or things that they know are going to make a lot of money. But I do think there's still always going to be a market for sci-fi because there's such a huge audience for it.
They want to emphasize the franchise part of it, though I can't really think of the last sci-fi franchise except for Alien.
Well, Star Wars.
Well, and that one's like huge.
In terms of franchise, I mean, they're not making a lot of original franchises right now. They're going again with what works and what's proven to make them money. I don't ever like to say never because things always break through. So, and I truly believe like a great unique idea and a great writing will always win. So I'm never going to say never, but just in terms of looking at the current market and the current trends, yes, there's absolutely always going to be room for sci-fi, no question. You just have to come at it from a different, unique way.
Do you still have a passion for theater? Do you work with writers who write both screenplays and plays?
I do. I hired Sheila Callahan, who's a very well-known New York playwright, to write a movie when I was at the Combine, and she was amazing. I think a lot of amazing writing comes out of the theater world. I don't perform or produce theater anymore, but I do love to attend it, and obviously I'm always going to have a real love and appreciation for that world.
Let's see. For general meetings, is there an expectation that you as the writer will pitch something specific, or is it just to get a sense of who that writer is? Assuming they want us to pitch, how much detail do execs tend to want in general meeting pitches?
Also a good question. My purpose for going into a general meeting is to get to know the writer and where their interests lie and what type of person they are and whether or not so that I know how to link a writer with the right piece of material. And I think a lot of executives and producers go into meetings in that way. However, if you have stuff that you want to pitch, and you will get asked, what else are you working on? That's kind of a standard question. Or what else have you written? It's important that you come prepared to the meeting knowing what would fit for them and what wouldn't. I always think it's just a good idea to have something in your back pocket. And then in terms of pitching it, I wouldn't pitch more than a minute or two, maybe give like a little bit more than the log line and see how they're reacting and then gauge whether or not you should keep going. But you do not want to pitch the whole movie. You want to pitch just enough to get them interested so that they say, you should send that to me when you're done, or you should send that over to me. But you don't want to get into too much detail because you want to keep things moving at a pretty quick clip.
So this next question relates to that. So I was just wondering if you had any advice on the best ways to follow up with an exec after they have requested your script and also after a meeting. Is there a certain amount of time to wait before following up after a meeting? Are there any no-nos?
I mean, you don't want to email and call them every day. A lot of it's, that's common sense stuff. If you have an agent or manager, you want to make them do it. If you don't, then I would, send an email after the meeting, a day or two after the meeting, saying something like, I look forward to hearing your response on my material. And then I usually say give 2 weeks to a month, depending on the apparent volume or position of the person that you met with.
Okay, and guys, just to let you know, since I'm seeing such a flood of questions coming in, and I'm seeing a lot of, what's Holly looking for? And is she going to be listening to pitches? And is it this type of drama or that? I'm going to say right now that let's not overwhelm Holly with personal pitching to her. And she does do pitch sessions with us. You can always book a pitch session with her if that's what you guys want to do. But let's not use this time for that. Otherwise, we're going to be here for hours. So just if you ask a question about pitching to her or what her company is looking for, what the submission policy is, and et cetera, I'm going to skip it for now, because we don't want to tax Holly. Okay, so next question is, how closely do you and executives look at the writer's personal connection to the material?
I think it's always a nice anecdote, but it's not necessary. I think it's nice because it shows that you have a passion and an enthusiasm for the material, or, I think the personal connection, depending on what it is, can be important. But it's not absolutely necessary. It's just a nice add-on.
In relation to period pieces, what do you personally think of them as if it's a story set in the past, but it's relatable now?
I mean, I am always asking the question, why now? So yes, I think that's really important, and important that you brought that up. I do think that the period piece does need to be relevant, but I'm just looking for really great stories with really great relatable characters. I don't have an issue with period material. I can't have all period material. That's a concern. But having a couple of period pieces. The Founder was a period piece. Cruise is a period piece, and there are period pieces in this, both set, in the 1900s. But regardless, they're both period pieces. So I think the market's more open to period than it has been in the past.
This one says people say don't write scripts with kids, animals, or period pieces. Each of my 3 scripts has these respectively. How do you couch that with whoever you're pitching?
Yes, people there. How do I say this? Those can be challenging to push through the market, but I can point to a bunch of examples where kids, Stranger Things, a TV show that I was putting together with HBO, all had kids under the age of 12. You look at A Dog's Purpose. People love animal movies. You don't want to have a saturation of them, but I can point to examples where those things do work. Some companies don't want to tackle those things. I get it. They don't want to tackle baseball because it doesn't travel internationally. Yes, that's true. You may have to tackle these things in television versus film, be open to, changing the format of what you're working on. But great writing will overtake everything else.
Okay, let's see. A couple of questions about TV. Are TV projects treated in the same way? So I'm guessing all your entire lecture and general meetings and everything, would it apply to TV as well?
Yes, it would. With TV, character is even more important, and you need to be prepared to show that that it has a life beyond one season or beyond one episode. So you do need to have that relatable central core of what your series is about. And it needs to have a really great character, and you have to be prepared to say it goes on for a couple seasons, like the overall series is about this, but season 1 will chronicle this and season 2 will chronicle something
else. In the same vein of TV, do you think young and new adult cable drama TV shows are fading out?
No, there are still certain networks that do them. I don't think that's the case. I do think that some of the networks are growing up with their audiences. For example, what's the Disney? It's not the Disney Channel. It's the I'm totally blanking. Sorry, guys. It's run by Disney ABC. They've had to grow up with their audiences. But no, I actually think if you can break into the millennial space, there's actually more opportunities through places like Awesomeness TV. YouTube is trying to target a younger demographic. A lot of these other platforms, Verizon Go, they are all targeting millennials who have their cell phones and watching, content via phone now. So I don't think it's dying out by any means.
How do you said not to cast in the query letter, but how do you feel about writers mentioning cast ideas during a pitch, like think Sarah Paulson?
That's fine. I actually think that's a good idea. During a pitch, saying, because I'll do that when I'm pitching material. I will send something to a financier and I'll be like, this is like a perfect role for Sandra Bullock. Something like that just kind of puts a certain look in their head. Yes. You like Sarah Paulson is great. When you are pitching to the actual production company of a person who, of a particular actor, I don't recommend hitting too hard on the fact that their person would be great, because their mind is already going, can I put my actor in this? So I think it's unnecessary to mention in that case, because that's why they're looking at it.
Let's say I sent in a query letter to a manager and haven't heard back. Would you recommend repackaging that query with what we've learned today and sending again a month later?
Yes, but if you don't get a response after that, I would probably yes, but after that, I would probably let that one go. If you still want to try and get in some way, then try and do it vis-a-vis one of the other methods we talked about, like festivals, pitch competitions, blacklists, that sort of thing.
What if an executive asked to have a meeting with you, suggested a date, and asked what time is best for you, you respond and then don't hear back? Should you follow up or move on?
Follow up one more time, because again, people do overlook emails. So follow up one more time on the assumption that it may have gotten lost. And then if you don't hear back, I would say it's probably best to move on.
Are you interested in knowing, as part of a pitch, if a major agency has taken delivery of a script for one of their top acting and or directing clients?
In the pitch, yes. What do you mean by taking delivery?
I think like one of their clients is looking at it.
Yeah, in the pitch, just don't put it in a query letter or a written document. I would say if it feels very real, then you can say it in the pitch. Like, but know that it may be verified. They may call and find out.
Same question, but like, would you mention it if it's a major studio?
That a major studio is reading it?
I guess, yeah.
It's hard.
And the first round of coverage is positive, but I think you already said that coverage doesn't really mean much.
It does. Like I don't think you want to. I don't think you need to say coverage comes back positive at any point, because if they are reading it, they will figure that out for themselves. You want to let them form their own opinion, because maybe that other coverage you had came in positive, but this person like loves your piece of material. So you don't necessarily want to color what they're thinking in that manner. I know the counter to that is going to be like, well, if the coverage is coming back positive, that might encourage them to read it. But I think that you rely on your pitch and the hook in order to convince them to take a look at it. Does that answer your question?
We're gonna hope so. Are people ravenous for scripts about race and gender because of political climate?
Right now, that conversation is at the forefront of the industry right now, and I think it's very important that people are looking at content that is much more diverse. I think it's great that there's shows on the air like Queen Sugar and Moonlight got made, and Lion. I think these are really great. There will eventually become an oversaturation. But yes, right now people are taking, I wouldn't say they're ravenous for it, but definitely people are being much more open-minded and inclusive and having a bigger dialogue, which I think is fantastic, because it's giving more roles and more opportunities, and frankly, more diversity of storytelling, which I think is very additive. I think it's great.
Do you think it's a good strategy to approach production companies founded by acting talent versus, say, production companies and execs?
No, it doesn't matter either way. Either they will connect with those people, or and a lot of those actor production companies do content that doesn't necessarily have their person in it. But I don't think one is better than the other.
In regards to the personal connection, what if a specific writer provides a perspective no other writer can provide for a certain subject or concept?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
They were talking about the personal connection when somebody asked, I think in the query letter, what if a specific writer provides a perspective no other writer can provide for a certain subject or concept?
Well, if the query letter has something completely unique and different, then it's going to get attention. I'm still a little unclear. Sorry. I'm a little unclear on the question.
I mean, I think basically what they're asking is what guys you should strive for in every script is execs are looking for, you're telling this story, but why are you the best person to tell it? So if you do have like a unique perspective of it, like you were a homicide cop and you're writing a, you know, serial killer mystery or whatever, and you worked on a serial killer case, that's you do get a different perspective than someone who's writing it that did not go through that. So I think they're saying like,
oh yeah, you should absolutely include that in the query letter. The examples that I showed did have some about me at the bottom or some personal connection at the bottom of the query letter. So there is a way to weave that in. I'm sorry, I thought you meant in terms of like, because I was trying to connect query letters with writing assignments, and it wasn't, that connection wasn't, that's not a good connection. So yes, I do think if you have a personal connection that's important, then yeah, you should include it in your letter.
and guys, that doesn't mean like if you wrote a family drama to say, well, I'm qualified because I have a family. Like,
that's a good note.
We've seen that, so we're like, we get it. So don't like do something like that. Are there any pitfalls new writers should be aware of when pitching their material?
Going too long. That tends to be a very common pitfall, which is you want so badly to tell all of it because it's, you know, you've worked so hard on it, and you feel that if you don't have all the details in there, that they're not going to understand how great the project is. But I actually think a less is more approach tends to be more effective. If you are pitching in a short form pitch, trying to get them to read your screenplay, you actually just want to whet their appetite. So you want to talk about the character, and you want to talk in kind of broader terms. But you just don't want to go on and on and on and try and pitch every single act. You're just trying to do enough to get them to say, yes, I want to read your screenplay because I want to find out what happens. If you are pitching on a project where you've come up with a pitch for a piece of material, then you're going to want to go a little longer. But again, going long is probably the biggest pitfall. Also, putting plot over character, that tends to be another one. The character is always going to be more important than the plot. And what's the other one that writers tend to do? I think those are the two big ones, trying to tell everything and going on too long.
Let's see. If you go through more than 2 or 3 rounds of rewrites with a development exec, at which point is it okay to ask when a contract might be forthcoming, or if the writer should get an agent?
Ooh, that is an excellent question. Look, development executives are going to get as much free work out of you as they possibly can. It's an unfortunate reality, but it's a reality. I would say if it feels advantageous and it feels like your piece of material is getting better with each round, keep doing it. If you feel like it's not improving and it's not getting anywhere, then you need to make a decision whether or not you want to walk away, or if you want to. If they are saying that they want to pick it up and keep that piece of material for themselves, after 1 or 2, you need to say, hey, at what point can we talk about putting something in writing? This is why having an agent or manager is great, because they get to be the bad guy and step in and say, my client's not doing more work until you put something in writing or pay them. So that's why I'm always very I promote getting an agent or manager if you can, because they protect you as well as making it easier for you to gain access. But yes, after 2 or 3, I would say you should and you don't feel like, you're taking huge steps forward that will benefit you in the long run. Because remember that as you are taking it further and further, because there's nothing in place, you own that. So if you have a piece of material that you've been getting free notes on, well, that benefits you. So I think you weigh it on a case-by-case basis, but if you feel like you're being taken advantage of, then that's the time to step up and say something.
If a character has a unique name but could be considered offensive by some, would that be a setback for the script to be considered?
I don't think so. I'm not entirely quite sure what you mean, but I don't think so.
What's your advice on pitching a script if the most recent comp didn't make a profit?
That comp needs to have gotten a lot of a critical buzz. Otherwise, I would scrap the comp. It either needs to be something that was very critically well received or financially well received.
Let's see. And guys, some of you are like repeating your questions because you feel like I didn't get to it. I swear to God, I'm getting to every single one. I'm just going down the list. So it's like, don't worry about it. We're gonna get to each one. What are some of the TV projects you've worked on?
There is, so I did a couple miniseries at Overbrook that unfortunately did not come out. They kind of dissolved the TV division. So they wouldn't be very familiar. I was developing one about Bass Reeves. That was really cool. And then while I was at the Combine, I sold with the team a project called Nightfall that just filmed in Prague. That will be coming out on History Channel probably end of this year and next year. I'm not involved with it anymore, but that was a great project about the Knights Templar. I also sold a show to HBO while I was at the Combine that was called Playing with Fire, and actually was about kids who were under the age of 12. They were about 12, 13, who were latchkey kids growing up in the 70s. So don't give up hope. You can sell a show that does have kids in it. And then I was developing a couple other things, a couple dramas about, there was a crime drama set in Alaska that I was developing. And then now I have another period television show that I'm putting together. Yeah.
In relation to the political climate question, have you noticed a flooding of scripts that tackle the current political landscape?
Not too much yet, but there are a lot of patriot, terrorism, true story scripts out there. And a lot of people do have projects that deal a lot with patriots. But I have a feeling you will be seeing quite a bit of content coming through soon that involves the current political climate. I know that existing projects or existing shows like Scandal are taking it on head first. So I think you'll be seeing it more particularly with the existing stuff that's out there. But yeah, it'll be coming. I have no question. It'll be coming soon.
Let's see. This kind of is in the same vein. So do you think 8 to 10 episode type TV shows are going to continue? And guys, those are like mini series. And then are mini series easier than full TV series to sell?
To a degree, yes. I think what's happening is a lot of things that originally would have been brought up as films are being presented as miniseries because they're, for whatever reason, have more material or a bigger budget than would exist in the film market. So yes, I do think the 8 to 10 limited series is going to work. The other reason that limited series is very popular is because you can get a bigger actor who doesn't have to commit to season after season after season. So that's why you now have Tom Hardy on Taboo, and you have Reese Witherspoon doing the HBO show. It's because they aren't locked into a long-term contract, but can have the opportunity to do TV. So yes, it's advantageous. just make sure you aren't repurposing everything to fit the limited series model. It also needs to feel like a complete story that can be told in 8 to 10 episodes.
Somebody said, I heard not to do a mini series unless you are a major producer or star, but that's changing now.
I mean, you are going to need major attachments. I don't know if it's going to necessarily sell clean, but you know, a production company, if you get it into a production company, they should help with the packaging of it. Like I'd have to look into it, but I think a lot of the stuff that's on the air came from people who packaged the projects together.
And guys, we did a limited series webinar last year, which I think is like on demand now, or will be going on demand, and it covers everything. It's like 2 hours long with lots of questions answered. So check that out if you have more limited series questions. Can you recommend some management companies and agencies that are your favorites?
It depends. It depends what I'm looking for, honestly. A new emerging company that I'm a huge fan of is The Mission, which the company is called The Mission because they are specifically targeting stories that are tough to tell, that deal with diversity and gender, and have a mission just to be good humans. So I really love them. I think Anonymous Content as a management company has amazing clients. Management 360 as well. You know, I work with all of the major talent agencies and have specific agents that I work with. But I think the diversity would be more in the management companies. Who else is my favorite? For Below the Line, I love WPA. For who else do I like? There's a lot of individual managers I like as well. Brooklyn Weaver is fantastic, and he works with Angelina Chen. They're awesome. Lee Stobbe has really made a mark in the last couple of years and has a real eye for finding amazing talent and really cultivating them into top blacklist scripts. So I've been very impressed with him. Madhouse is great. There are a lot of really great management companies out there.
Let's see. These two questions kind of go together. So one says, I have a half-hour sitcom project with 3 completed 10-minute episodes online. I feel like my pilot script in Show Bible is stronger than the completed episodes online. Do I mention the online episodes in my pitch? And another question said, if you have a short film produced, would you include a link of it in your letter pitch?
Well, to answer the first one, if you think that your Bible and if you think the Bible and your presentation is stronger than what's online, you don't want to direct them online. You want to put your best foot forward. In terms of, sorry, what was the second question?
That they've produced
oh yeah.
Yeah.
It depends what you're going for. If this is for a manager, if this is to get an agent or manager, yes. If you produced a short because you're trying to show that you can direct, then yes, absolutely.
Let's say, what was it? What about projects that are not pro the current government or military?
I think the whole purpose of storytelling is to show different points of view, and I think that stuff that's controversial or slightly shocking, I think is great. It incites dialogue. So I wouldn't hesitate. Like, you should absolutely pursue interesting storytelling.
When someone says the writing is great, but it's a hard sell because it's a mockumentary or somewhat odd, is that really valid or just laissez salesmanship?
It can be valid. I mean, there's a lot of really great writing that's going to be very difficult to sell. It just also means it's probably not for them. It doesn't mean it won't be right for everybody. They just might not want to tackle it, or it might not fit with their brand. But it just means it's probably not for them.
In your experience, how long would you say it takes to develop a project from pitch to principal filming, feature or TV?
It can go anywhere from 3 years to 10 years. Like it varies. To get a project from start to finish, it varies. Television's much faster. I take that back. We did the Throwaways on Crackle. We managed to pull that off in under a year. But I think larger undertakings, feature films, big series, it can take a while.
And the last question, what about if you are pitching an animated project in your query letter? Would you recommend attaching a link to concept art you have for it in your letter? And does it help to mention a link in your pitch? Would you even recommend using a website to help with that?
For animated, yes. If you want to include a link to take a look at the accompanying artwork, I think visuals are really important. It helps. It really helps things kind of stick in people's brains. So I'm a big promoter of that. But if it makes sense in the layout of the letter, yeah. And if you are pitching that particular project to someone, then yes, send them the link.
All right, guys, that wraps it up. Those are all the questions. And I'm fingers crossed that this is recording. I'll send out the link later. So thank you so much, Holly, for your time and being so generous with your knowledge. And I think because you're the whole host, it won't close until you probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.
For that. All right. Thanks, guys. And thanks, Holly. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, too. Bye, guys.